Fabulous. So I think probably a good place to start is a thank you actually to Kimi and Leanne for the research and all the work that's gone into this. Absolutely incredible piece. I think it was exciting anyway. We've all been talking about the future of work, but and then obviously bringing the insight of Mitch. But I think probably if we start with a bit of an intro, those who don't know me, Richard Gahagan, founder of Adam. Obviously 14 years now in this sort of hiring talent world, but a massive interest in where the world's going, industry, the economy, that sort of thing. And for those who see my history, quite sort of active in my opinion. And what about you, Mitch? Do you want to just do a bit of an intro on yourself?
Yeah, happy for you to do that. I can do it as well. So yeah, I'm Adam Mitcheson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of My2B, which is a people success platform. So we help connect, develop, and engage your teams remotely around the world using AI and machine learning with things such as scaled mentoring across your organization.
So when you were looking at this piece, Mitch, you had lots of great ideas about this. One of the massive things for me is how mentoring is going to affect agile working, engagement, culture, learning, development, that kind of thing. What would you say are the key areas that your platform is going to bring, I guess, to this new world that we're going to work in?
So there's a couple of different things, and sometimes it depends on the organization and where their focus area is. Naturally, what a lot of people do with the mentoring initiative is rather than just introduce it to an entire company in its instance, they'll do it with a smaller section of the company before they then roll it out at scale. So a company we're working with in Silicon Valley, their focus is diversity and underrepresented groups. So your BAME community, and ironically, a lot of this was happening. We've been working on this for about a month now with them to get this initiative going, and with everything that's been going on in the world at the moment, it's really sort of at the forefront of everyone's mind, which is just that's bringing it to everyone else's attention as well. So that a lot of people are thinking, how can we do things like that, and what can we do with it? So a focus on developing that talent within is another one that ties into that, because the focus of this is that we give those people who are underrepresented, who maybe don't have the network or the access that they previously would have had, access to those people who can help them move up the ladder and recognise the talent, and then create a more diverse not just a diverse workforce, but a diverse management structure. I mean, that's one of the areas that's really focusing on at the minute. But again, it can be on the various different aspects of the challenges of remote work. I mean, we put this into the white paper. We focused on it that there's the challenges of remote work are often the same that you have with a team in general. If you're in the same office, the communication, recognizing talent, retaining staff, keeping a good culture. There's a lot of those things with remote work that are just as much as a challenge. And the better we get with the communication side and things like that, with Teams, with Zoom, with the various other aspects, the easier that becomes, and it just breaks down a lot of barriers. And what a mentoring sort of program can do is give you some sort of structure to it. So we have quite an informal approach, quite a holistic approach to it. But when you've got a sort of framework around it, it really helps move it in the direction you want to go in.
So one of my concerns, I guess, is an opportunity if it's done well, is when everybody's agile working remote, is those subtle learnings that I know in my early career, you're working with people who've got just talent and experience that you don't have, and just by incidental, not formalized training, you get to watch people around you and you get to see what good looks like. How can you bring that to life, for example, with your platform, but in the working environment generally? What have you seen in Silicon Valley, for example, where they're really strong at bringing on people who they may not actually see these people physically more than maybe 5 times a year? Yeah,
I mean, the interesting thing around that is the L&D side of things is there's a thing called the 70-20-10. It's not necessarily a problem, but there's just a statistic where around 90% of your workplace learning is actually done informally, either through the water cooler conversations or at the desk, just asking someone, how do you do this? How do you fix that? Compared to 10% of your formal sat down sort of classroom based training. Yeah, that's where most of the budget goes, because that's the cost side of it in a lot of ways. So bringing in, again, focused areas to the what is it you want to do? Is it upskilling? Is it focusing on that? Is it that's where that can help with a platform like ours. And the charge that Silicon Valley have been making with remote work, I mean, it's not, this is it, remote work isn't new. It's been around for a while, and as a company, we were betting on this. We were putting everything in, thinking that remote work's going to be the way it's happening. And there was a couple of little indicators that gave us that initiative to say, this is the way the world's going to go and we're going to back it. And one of them was when I was in Silicon Valley in October last year, I actually started seeing more of these companies collaborating, which I'd never seen before. Normally they're like, we have to do everything they're doing, but better. So you had like the likes of Box, Zoom, Okta, Slack, like all together, because they recognise who's best in class at what they do. And so for Box, I said, right, we have the best file sharing and organised workspace, so we can work Zoom because they've got the best video tech. And Slack do the same thing. Slack have got built-in video tech. They use Zoom and they're partnered with Zoom. So they're actually just putting the heads together rather than butting heads for a change. So that was massive to see that. And the other thing is that because Silicon Valley and San Francisco is now so expensive, probably one of the most expensive cities in the world to live and work in, the talent level is not necessarily dropping, but your base level, your sort of graduate level, is you can get 10 graduates in Manchester than you can get in San Francisco. So it's just totally different. So they're actually starting to think, actually, we're better off. And because the tech side is getting, especially on communication, and again, more and more apps getting plugged into these platforms and things like ours and what we do, we plug into them and into the systems. The integrations is what's changing a lot of this. So there's various platforms for various different focus areas, and it's what is your focus area? And that's where you can plug it in. Some are specialist in your communication, some are specialist in your workplace development, some are specialist in culture. So they're actually recognizing that actually we can all bolt on together, and it's almost like a big jigsaw coming together.
I think as well it creates massive budget opportunities for me, because if you look internationally, you gave the comparison of Silicon Valley. If you look at even London to Manchester, our previous London office was a quarter of the size of our Manchester office and cost more. So you look at office space and the reduction there, and then you look at salary comparisons. Like you say, it becomes more competitive. Our ability to hire somebody who could remote work was always there, but it wasn't probably as practical without Teams and Zoom and those kind of things. And you probably worry about the culture and engagement, meaning that you don't really want to have somebody who feels like they're out on a limb. And that, for me, has completely gone on its head and created an opportunity for us to now just look for the best people in any location, really. And building on your point about Silicon Valley, I think there's a perception in terms of what we do in terms of hiring and onboarding people that you wouldn't want to work in a market where you can't meet people. Well, that again has changed, and it's probably a bit old-fashioned, dare I say, and maybe we've obviously learned from that. So I think the opportunity is massive. And in terms of, if you like, the sociable side, what have you seen done well in terms of, because I get the fact that the mentoring side, the platform's great, and from our perspective, the hiring, there's massive opportunity. How do you think it's going to look there, the look and feel? Because I do think there are people who love working in an office, love to see people, beers after work, coffee in the morning, whatever it might be. What's been done well there in terms of?
Well, you can't beat that. I mean, like in terms of a human experience, like so we have it built into our platform that when you're meeting options, face to face with the first one always, because if you had the option to do it, that's the best connection you can make. And we always classed ourselves as a piece of technology to facilitate a human experience, not replace it. So that's something that you want to capture and you want to do where possible. But the advancements of this brought everything forward where you can have that, where you can work remotely as a team and distribute. But I think the social side of it, I mean, there's some almost basic things like setting in Slack channels where you can, you have like TV shows that people share, so getting that office chat sort of stuff, like what was on last night, football chat, and, all the bits and pieces going on. So you're still getting a bit of it. Because I mean, we had this in the first few weeks where myself and co-founder Damien, like, every time we checked in with each other via Zoom, it was basically work, just like work. And it was like, I think it was about 2 weeks in before we sort of stopped and went, "What have you been watching this? Have you been doing that?" Like, I just wanted to see what's going on. Like, I've not really spoke to you about anything but work for 2 weeks. so we'd lost a bit of that, and I think this is where you're going to see more advancements in technology. Though, I mean, the zoomed out was a phrase that we saw a couple of weeks in, wasn't it? It was like everyone was getting a bit like, it was a bit intense. It's a bit, because you're always looking at yourself as well. Everyone's like, I can see myself and I can see what I look like, how I'm reacting, how I'm moving. So everyone's always on. So it's quite intensive in terms of energy expense. So I think you'll see something, I don't know what it is yet, but I think we'll see something, whether it's the physical, the hardware, or the software side of it, that creates that more social environment that will allow a distributed office.
Yeah.
But I actually think, my personal opinion, what I think is going to happen is actually, and I think the girls actually did a lot of research on this and found some great examples of it. Particularly was IBM. So I think IBM went fully remote a couple of years ago, then reverted on the decision. Now I think they reverted on that decision because they were in a world that wasn't fully remote. So their being fully remote worked in terms of getting things done, but because the rest of the world wasn't with it, it was like not meeting up with people, not seeing things. I think that was a bit of a blocker. And I think we'll see that. I think we'll see like a 50-50 split, or a 60-40, 80-20, or something, where you have half your office size that you had previously, but it's more of a hub. It's like, right, drop in if you want, or if you're in the office, pick your days this week. And just more flexible working, flexible hours, because we've seen things like the commute, going down, the impact, the carbon impact. Again, this is going into so many different areas of it. So I think there's going to be a massive shift with that. But I think, again, going back to that, what examples have we seen where they've done things well is, I think you guys are not just saying this, you have been a good example of that. You kept things, you've already got a great office culture and you kept it going. So you've done a few different things you'll be able to say better than I have, that what you've done to do that and maintain that.
Well, it's funny you should say that, and Leanne can probably chip in a minute, I think, with her views, because obviously she's critical to the operational running of the business. And I think the thing I've noticed is the equality of meetings, and people that maybe were a bit disengaged in certain meetings, or if you had a weekly meeting that was not compulsory, it's not our culture, but a sales meeting, for example, you just couldn't help it that some people were more engaged than others. I've noticed that massively improve things in terms of communication. There's a downside. I think the zoomed out bit's a great point. I think you can have too many meetings. I think if you're physically in an office and somebody says, can I meet you a minute after the last meeting, you'd probably say, well, hang on a minute, I need to go and make a coffee and stuff. So I think there'll be a bit of that, which I think is partly self-time management and partly courtesy to other people. I think it's important with meetings that if you are a bit asynchronous, or people's diaries are out, or one person's agile and remote working, is respecting their time and when they're working, and it isn't now as rigid. I think it was easy to be a bit lazy, dare I say it, previously, where, well, we're all in the office at, let's say, 8:39 in the morning, we're all here till, broadly speaking, 5:30. So you could pretty much ask for a meeting and know you'll get one. I think now it's different. But I've definitely already noticed that the amount of time I'm getting back by not commuting, and I presume it'll be not walking across Manchester and London and whenever you're physically in places, it's just so much better that you can actually do so much more. But I do think you have to be careful, because I've definitely done days where the meetings are intense, they're long, they're back to back, there's very few breaks, and you don't really notice it until after, when you suddenly get this massive headache, or you don't quite feel right. My mind's a little bit grumpy, but yeah, it'd be good. Anecdotally, Leanne, what have you seen in terms of our business, and how any meetings that maybe I've not been in that you've seen, or anything interaction-wise? What improved?
Really similar to what you guys have kind of already covered. I mean, obviously we know that we'd had this technology set up for the best part of 2 years, and it was only being forced into using it that we realised quite how it could free up our time, as you were saying. And like, obviously, as you guys know, I commute over from Liverpool to Manchester every day under normal circumstances, and it's the same experience for me. The amount of time I get back is incredible. But I did at first find myself, again, you end up spending that time continuing to work sort of longer hours, rather than it giving you sort of more time and more freedom in your own life and some balance. And generally speaking, I found that that's really similar for people across the business. And so now I think we've got to a point where it's accepted that you don't have to be available all the time, every second of every day. And instead, actually, you can just put a communication out there to somebody in the business, and they'll respond in the time that suits them best. And I think we've really started to embrace that over the last few weeks in particular. The point you made about meetings and it giving voices to other people, I think something I've really noticed with our company, because we've got a few people, myself included, that are quite introverted. And so in a big group meeting, you wouldn't necessarily always speak out. It's not that you've not got anything to add or that you're not interested in the conversation, but there are other louder personalities that are going to take over. So you just kind of take a back seat and allow them to speak. Whereas on this kind of format, it's a lot easier to actually sort of take up that space, as it were, and to be involved in a conversation, because I don't know, I guess it's, you've not got everybody all around you, which can be quite distracting, picking up on social cues of everybody that's involved in the room. Everyone's just there in front of you on this little rectangular screen, and so it's a lot easier for introverts to, I guess, be more involved. The flip side of that, though, is obviously extroverts that need that social interaction to literally keep them going. And you're all nodding and laughing. That's so true. You're getting the opposite effect. You're not benefiting from this. So I'm seeing people that would normally be the really vocal ones in meetings stay dead quiet because they're just not getting the interaction that they need to fuel their own ideas and their own creativity. So we're going to have to find a balance. It's as simple as that, really. Like you say about using an office as a hub. Like obviously we've got a physical office space that is big enough for the current headcount plus more. We've got room for both. But the reality is, I don't think we'll use it that way in the future. And I think that is, generally speaking, the sort of biggest trend that I'm seeing is lots of people saying we still need a physical space to be able to get people together, but you're not going to be obliged to be there all day, every day like you were before. I mean, are you thinking the same sort of thing, Adam?
Yeah, and I think one thing that is it maybe wasn't considered at the start. I think it did develop though over the lockdown, was whilst that we're all in this together was the initial reaction. Everyone's in this in their own very individual way. It doesn't matter what your living situation is, whether you live alone, live with family, live with partners, live with kids. It's like everyone's going through this in some sort of unique experience. And it was something, again, I only realised this last week or so. My cousin's got 3 daughters. 4 is the eldest. So he calls his house the zoo. He says it's just he's on 24 hours a day. Yeah. When the kids give them a break, him and his wife, they get like 10 minutes to sit down and have a brew, and like then they're back again. And then in the evening, when the kids go to bed, they've got nothing left. They're absolutely spent. So he can't work from home. Like he works in a construction business, and he has to go on site, I think, for it anyway. But I suppose he could have done some of it remotely in terms of what he does. But to find a physical space at home, and to find an area where he can even be quiet for half an hour and phone calls, he couldn't do it. He'd have to be like sat on his bed, and even then, it's like that leaves his missus looking after the 3 kids. It's just not, he can't really do it. So I never considered that, if I was honest. I never really thought about actually that must be a really difficult working situation for a lot of people that they're in. They haven't got. I mean, I'm in my kitchen / living room at the minute, which it's a flat and it's basically one big room, and I haven't got an office space as such. So other people have got offices, other people haven't. Everyone's got these different. It's unique to you. So I think when you have the option available of an office, a lot of people might go because they'll find like a level of productivity, or they'll be able to just crack on with a few things. I mean, on a personal level, working from home for me, there's a coffee shop that's next door, and I used to just go there and do like 2 hours, but it's been shut since lockdown. And because I'd be really productive in that 2 hours. When I'm at home and I'm sort of, I find it easy to get distracted or flick the telly on and put Sky Sports News on or something like that, and just sort of start looking beyond the computer at it and things like that when something comes up. Whereas I have that focus 2 hours in the one spot, and I'm just on it and I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I think we will see the return to the office where it's available. I think it's going to be a balance. There is a lot of the fully remote. That's what a lot of people are saying, and they're saying it like, again, going back to Silicon Valley, and Twitter made the first jump when they said you could be remote indefinitely, but we've got an office. And then all the others, naturally, one leader does it, the rest of them sort of follow suit. I think Facebook, Google, at least until 2021 now, are going to be remote. And these are companies that have invested millions, if not billions, in their campuses. They're not even offices.
Yeah.
They're almost like theme parks. It's look at Apple, $5 billion that office cost, I think. So I'd imagine they'll want people in it. Just they've got enough cash in the bank not to worry about something like that. I think they'll want people in that space. And again, coming back to creativity and flowing ideas, it is something you can't always beat. But I think it's going to be a balance. I don't think you're going to get a full. I think we were obviously forced into that first couple of weeks of it. I'd be shocked if it did go that way. And I think we're already starting to see people ease into it and getting that balance again.
Yeah, we'll probably see more distributed workforces than we ever have done, but I think there'll definitely be more leaning towards a balance of the two. I mean, like Kimi, you worked remotely for a really long time.
I mean, I was just going to say, like, as a sort of flip side, like, I'm very introverted. At the start of this year, I started working, it was from home. And the reason that I started looking for something else and the reason I came to Adam was because even as an introvert and even as somebody that's used to spending time on my own and working on my own, I was feeling really isolated and I missed humans, I missed seeing people. And so, yeah, even as somebody that I thought I would be suited for working from home life, and I'm just like, I need humans, I need the collaboration, I need the hi, how are you, how was your weekend kind of thing. It can be really isolating, and it is a concern from a mental health and well-being perspective as well. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I think as well, you look at it at the moment and it feels like it's normal because we all know that we're all in our own working environments, so you don't feel like you're missing out. So that kind of fear of missing out, when you find out that half the team are in the office and they've actually planned to go for a few beers after work, or they're having a nice lunch somewhere, or might be doing a bit of shopping in town, whatever it might be, I think that's when we'll see a shift again. But economically, I think there's obviously in most cities now going to be a lot of capacity for office space. So it's quite interesting. I think that could change quite a bit, where you get multi-purpose. And Mitch, better than me what these campuses are like. But I would imagine if use the Apple example, you've got people who probably travel there and don't go there all the time. If you just make it more accommodating so that people can actually, when they are there, maybe part of it now turns into accommodation blocks, or maybe some of the larger offices now, half of it becomes apartments.
As an example.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just saying, as an example of that, it's what Amsterdam are doing at the moment, because they have such a huge growth. They can't build houses fast enough for people that need them, but they've been building lots of office space. But with everything changing at the moment, they are trying to change these office buildings that are half completed into apartment buildings and housing and things like that, to try and deal with the housing issue, as opposed to, because people don't need offices anymore. So
I think that's what we'll start seeing more of. I think the commercial spaces are going to have to rethink the model a bit as well. I think the co-working model is standard, that you pay per desk. You either have a hot desk or a dedicated desk, and it's a monthly rolling fee. I mean, that had its challenges anyway. It was like, take WeWork, for example. We were in there when we were a two-man team, and it was like, right, we're looking at expanding, but we don't know how much or to what size. So it's like, do we have to commit to like a 4-person office, a 6-person office and it was like, well, we weren't sure what size we were going to be, and it's like, right, we get 4, and then suddenly we're up to 6. We have to do something with that, and it was like, well, how does that work? So I think they were locking you into things. It was a bit difficult to commit to. So what I think will happen now is, if you've got that sort of small team where you can sort of say, actually, we don't need to be in an office 5 days a week or 4 days a week. What we might do is we might go in for 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And they might have to see like if they can do day rate, and make it like that, or actually you pay for 10 days a month rather than a month's worth of a desk space. So I think you'll see a different model come out of it. And I reimagined, like you say, that everyone will start repurposing things. They'll be like, what can we do with this space that we've got now?
because when you've got a distributed workforce, you have different health and safety and security concerns than you do if you're all in one building and you've got an IT person that can keep on top of all your technology. When it's distributed, it's sort of making sure your team has the right equipment, that you're doing risk assessments, things like that. And I think a lot of companies don't realise that they need to be doing these things, even if their employees are working in their own homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you've got I think you're dead right. So I think for me, the kind of health and safety of an office is critical. The well-being of staff is another category of they're working from home. Maybe they'd normally say if they weren't happy. And so effectively you've got to be more attuned to that. But I think physically getting people back to work, there's a commute, which I think is the short term. And the health and safety conversations myself and Leanne have been involved in, that's actually almost the biggest problem of a lot. In other words, you're relatively safe, hopefully, in your own home. Obviously, you've got to watch things like, not being zoomed out and the setting. And I had neck ache for the first couple of weeks of lockdown. But I think it's basically the commute. So, I mean, personally, I'm going to solve that with our business by the fact that nobody will be forced to do any commute if they don't want to. But beyond that, when we are thinking about being back in the office more, that's obviously a consideration. But I do think it's going to be getting the tech right. Ironically, having just lost my tech, getting the tech right so that you can have a smooth working day. But then actually looking at what somebody's home setup like. As a business, do we need to invest? Do we need to help people? The people think it's all right, but actually they're working on a sofa at home. It's going to give them chronic back pain in 10 years. So that sort of stuff that probably you would notice in an office.
Absolutely. They're really easy things to cover remotely as well. It sounds like it's really challenging, but the fact of the matter is there's loads of places where you can get like template home working risk assessments, so you don't even have to invest loads of money into this. You just need to know which sort of questions you should be asking, and it's perfectly okay for you to get your employees to complete one remotely and send it into you with some pictures or diagrams to kind of show their setup. And from there, then you can take all the recommendations for changes. And it's just little simple investments in, say, a good office chair for them, or a desk set up in the spare rooms.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Is like I've seen some companies already do it where they like set up a stipend for each employee to set themselves up at home properly. And where they, there's actually technology that can use your webcam to monitor your posture and things like that, and check that you're actually not slumped over and you're at the right height and you've got everything set up, so that you, like you're saying there about having neck ache that first couple of weeks. I mean, I've got this office chair now at my kitchen table because the first couple of weeks I was sat on the kitchen chairs, which they do the job, but God, it was like I can't sit on this for 12 hours a day. So it was.
Well, likewise, that's why I've invested in a camera for this, because I sit much more naturally for this sort of call. Whereas on a Surface Pro, it's easy because you think it's comfortable during the call, but you're actually there for an hour, sort of slumped over it. So, yeah, I think it's a really good point. The health and safety, the well-being aspect of it. I think as well, there's a bit of a shift. I think as well as the micro sort of sorting out people's work environment, it'd be interesting to know how many people are now thinking, I love being in an apartment, but actually I wasn't thinking of moving to a house until maybe, I don't know, they've got kids or whatever, who are now thinking, well, actually the easiest solution really is actually getting a house that's got a spare room or even a home office. It'd be interesting to see how, because in my experience of downturns, recessions and things that are negative, there's always something huge that comes out. There's people who innovate, but there's also things that come out as an incidental. And I think one of them will be the housing economy has always been a really key part of the British economy. I think the housing market will boom probably in about a year or two. But I'm sure if anybody's thinking of buying a house, I think it's probably a great time now to move, because I do think there's going to be an absolute surge of people who think actually now's the better time to move to a house or an apartment. And the same applies obviously in the rentals market as well.
I think with that as well is going back to the ability to be distributed. We were thinking like, would we then need if we do go back, and when we do go back, do we need a city centre office anymore? I mean, the appeal of a city centre office is your transport hubs, everything on your doorstep, your social interactions, both after work and everything's around you and all that sort of stuff. But then, like literally up the road from me, there's a converted barn now that's co-working space. I might even go there and just see what I can do. Like, because like say I'm sat in the same room all day, and it does drive me mad every now and again. And I'm thinking maybe that's not a bad shout. And as you know, I like the outdoors, and I get up to the lakes quite a bit. So the first month or so of lockdown, or however 2 months of lockdown before I could get up there again, was absolutely killing me. And I was thinking, I can move there now. I've proved I can work from anywhere. I could just go. And if I want to commute down for board meetings or once a week, twice a week, I can. It's 2 hours in the car. That's not going to be a big deal. Whereas like previously, I thought no chance I'd have to be like tired or something before I get up there to do something like that, because you've got to be near the centre, the epicenter of everything. So I think again, that's what the opportunity is with distribution and remote, is you are going to want space to go to, a hub, a home, whatever it is, where you have your sort of core. But what it does allow you to is to connect with the rest of the world anywhere. And that's something that I don't think we were, even though we knew we had the technology, we had the ability to do a lot of this, I don't think we were fully bought into it as a global thing. I don't think it was fully, bought into that. You can have, again, we're coming back to what we do, the mentoring side of it is that you can have a mentor in New York if you're based in London. You just got to work out what works for you in terms of a time difference to set up your monthly call. Previously, I think that was a bit of a, it'd be better if it was all in one place and one spot, because you can get that human interaction. But people are more attuned to that idea now that actually we can connect to the rest of the world. And like you were saying about hiring talent, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's in that spot. If they're the best person for the job and they're based somewhere else, it's less of a barrier now.
Totally agree, and I think you've touched on some of them already, but it's often the salary to attract somebody, or in the sort of cool tech companies, it was making a ball pit in the office and a really nice place to make them sort of relocate. Now you're going to hire people, like you say, who've got ambitions that actually they're into mountaineering and they want to live in a different location, and because you'll allow that, that's great, and give almost the flexibility gives them the opportunity to live a life that they thought might be 20 years away. So I think it's really exciting for that, and the knock-on effects of that will mean that there's obviously more opportunity for people who do want to live in a city. The demand will go down for that. So I think it's phenomenal in terms of the opportunity. I know it sounds weird to say it's phenomenal in the current sort of climate, but I do think all I can see is opportunity. I think as well, if you look critically at one thing the UK doesn't do well historically, is our infrastructure is quite poor, roads, rail, all that sort of stuff. We're actually quite a rural island that most people live in about 5 cities, don't they? So I think that will be helpful for the country, the environment, and everything. The fact that you don't have to now rely on the train network that was already overloaded. And do we really need another massive train network to solve the problem, or actually should we just do business online, a bit more travel when it suits?
Yeah.
I think holiday travel will integrate as well. I know a couple of our team already want to basically look at parts of the year where they're going to live in Spain. On a pseudo working holiday, so you're available. I think that's huge because it gives you the opportunity to work. I've always loved the freedom more than being bothered when I'm on holiday. I'm not one of those people who when somebody calls me and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I know you're on holiday," because I see that as a give back for total flexibility. So I've absolutely loved this change, and not the kind of clock in, clock out. Well, I'm not at work now because it's 5:15 or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I thought that I think travel could become more expensive for a little while, certainly for a few years. The fact that you could actually now integrate that into a simpler way of a longer trip that might be more cost effective rather than just a simple long haul flight to the Southern Hemisphere, for example.
Yeah.
So many things that are opening up. So in terms of if you were kind of summing up, I think it's been a really good exercise, and thanks again to Kimi and Leanne for really doing all the hard work on it, and obviously for Mitch for your input. That's been absolutely incredible. Some of the insight and research that you've given, and actually seeing your business now go on. I think you said it was 5 years. You reckon it's brought your business forward in terms of the last sort of 6 months. If we were to do this again in 6 months, what do you think might be some of your predictions, or what do you think we might not have covered? What do you think we might be talking about, I guess, when we come out of lockdown?
So for me, I think in 6 months' time, I think one thing that's going to be very interesting in the next 6 months is the seasons. We're dealing with a virus that is, as we know from what we've been told by the scientists and the government, the heat actually helps sort of suppress it. If it's suppressed enough over the summer, then we could have a semi-normal life again in September, October. But then if it resurges, then it goes back in. That's going to have an impact that we're not. I don't think I've certainly thought about. I overheard it somewhere in the past. That's a really good point. But I think over the next 6 months, it's going to be moving towards whatever, the sort of throwaway phrase that everyone's saying, the new normal. I think we're going to get much more. We've already adapted. We've already got used to this situation. I think we will see some sort of return to the human interaction, back towards the office space. But I think it's always going to be some level of caution. There's always going to be some level of this hasn't gone away yet. It's just going to be like you flip the switch and we go back to packed pubs and football stadiums and things like that, and trains and transport. I think you're right. I think it's going to be staged. It's going to be staggered. But I think there is going to be the attitude for a lot of people is going to be moving towards how. I think we've gone through the survival bit. It's the bit that's like, right, you've got to this point. You've gone through survival mode 1. You're moving into recovery and progress. And I think that's where we're seeing a bit of a demand now. Is like, well, our product's also been in demand for survival mode and helping people get through this phase 1. There's actually a surge now coming of people going, right, we have to continue to develop our team. We're not going to, like the Silicon Valley example of they're not going back to the office till New Year, if they go back. They've got to start thinking and putting these things in places. So I think come the autumn is when you're going to start seeing the surge in a lot of things like that, and a lot of people going back into we need to then progress. We've gone through survival mode, initial phase, we've taken the hit of what we had to take. Now we've got to get moving towards progress again.
Absolutely. I think what I foresee being the biggest challenge is businesses like ours that are going to embrace remote working, or at least partially, and flexible working. It's going to amplify things that were already somewhat an issue within the business sort of before all of this. So like one of the biggest challenges I see will be the communication. And like you say, we're sort of getting through this now and everybody's very forgiving because we're all still in crisis mode. When we start to get back to normal, people's attitudes might shift towards, well, why aren't they online when I'm online? And about the fact that every person is going to have a different meaning of what work-life balance is for them, or what flexible working means to them. And so there's going to definitely be sort of cultural clashes within businesses between people who feel like they want to be back in the office, for example, and they want to be there all the time under standard office hours as we've come to understand it, versus the people that are going to want to really embrace the flexibility, only go to the office when they need to. And there's definitely the potential for friction there where, people aren't getting the answers that they want, or they feel like other people in the business aren't working as hard as they are because they're less visible. So I feel like that's going to be a massive challenge for leaders to actually overcome, and that I don't think will rear its head until in about 6 months' time, as people really do start to get back to what will be the norm now, is actually managing that within their culture. I haven't got an answer for it. I don't know if maybe you or Richard have, but I see that being quite a big challenge for people, to be honest.
I think it sits really nicely alongside. If you like us, which is relatively speaking, we're a performance-based business. We're only as good as the client thinks we are in a lot of cases, whichever part of our business you're looking at. And I think that danger that people don't realise they're not competing with themselves internally, they're actually making sure the client's happy. Work-life balance, all that flexibility, I couldn't be more bought into. I think it's fantastic. But that might one day mean that you're working for an American client, like I'm sure you do, Nick, where you've got to take a meeting at, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night or whatever it might be, and that could be the differentiator with you winning that business or not. So it's definitely, you're absolutely right. It's friction, it's balance, it's understanding that with greater autonomy, there's greater opportunity, and we can definitely have greater earnings potential and all that sort of stuff. But there's also greater opportunity for our competition, and therefore it will actually bring in competition. Now, in our case, I back our employee brand proposition. I back, our ability to do a great job. But you have got to recognise that now we're not just competing with, I don't know, the Northwest's best competitors or even the UK's best. Everybody will be thinking more globally. But for me, that's just an opportunity, and it's a positive. But I think for anybody who's thinking, I just want it to go back to normal, I want to get my team back in the office in Manchester and all that sort of stuff, I think that friction will be, it'll be 1, 2, 3 years down the line.
Yeah, and I think you're dead right there with I think it comes down to, as the leaders, you have to make sure everyone's bought into the vision of what you're trying to achieve. I mean, the way we operate, we're still a small team. We get a bit of flexibility with this, but we don't have set hours. We don't have like set routines or anything like that. Essentially, we have a serious level of autonomy, but we know what we've got to achieve and what we're working towards. And if we've got a deadline for something, we know we have to sometimes throw everything in at that, and everyone has to sort of muck in and go towards it. But then there might be times that then you get that sort of, you can take the foot, not to say take the foot off the gas, but you get a bit of a breather compared to that. You're not going at that speed all the time, but there will be times when that happens. And I think and again, that is the tricky balance with working from home or working remotely. Back to the example of my cousin, there's going to be people who really struggle with that, especially maybe in the evening or the time they've got the kids or whatever it is, where they do that. And getting that balance is going to be the challenge. And that's going to be both from the leader side of it to get them, right, how having a conversation with them, what works for you. It's like, right, between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, I just can't do it because I've got to look after the kids. But then I can do 6 till 8 at night when no one else might be working. So it's like it's getting that understanding of what works best for people, how they operate the best, what environment they need, what support they need. And it comes back to the fundamental of, we talked about it at the very start of the conversation. The challenges of a remote team are often the same as the ones that you have in person, which is communication is probably the first one. It's making sure all your communication channels are clear, making sure you're upfront about things. Don't let things foster. Let things build up. Clarity on it, and then focusing on the vision and what you're working towards. Getting everyone aligned with that and getting them on board. That's the way you'll achieve it, I think, with this.
I think as well, just for a positive side of things, it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of innovations and new technologies and everything that's going to start springing up over the next 6 months as people realise that remote working is here to stay, basically. And it's going to be really interesting to see the advancement in technology, but also to see like individual people within teams and them innovating personally or for their team or for their company as well. So I think that a lot of good ideas are going to come out of this as well. So yeah,
Definitely.
And one of the massive macro things, if you've ever seen Daniel Priestley, he talks about the baby boomer era moving into the era of having more time. So businesses that are perhaps now more leisure oriented, that's why the cafe culture sprung up, that sort of thing. And as the population grows in the older demographic, I think you've now got a demographic, and I certainly fall into this, I'm pretty sure Leanne does, in terms of people who've commuted quite a lot. They've had an hour or two at least every day, who literally have now got a day back, quite simply, and possibly more. If you then look at the meetings that are, as I mentioned earlier, getting across town or getting down to London, it's going to be fascinating to see what people do at that time. Is it a second job? Is it them pseudo setting up a business, behind the scenes that is what they're going to be doing in 5, 10 years? There's so many interesting things that I think could come out of it in terms of innovation. It's brilliant. That really is.
Definitely.
Well, no, thanks everyone for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops. I'm looking forward to hopefully doing another one in 2 or 3 months of how it's kind of all panning out. I think we've got some great predictions in there, but really enjoyed doing it. Catch you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.